Sweet potatoes, often thought of as advanced next level crops, too difficult for the average grower. A large, very distant relative of the common potato, this tropical powerhouse is actually a perennial vine in the morning glory family. These guys are slow growing and need consecutive months of warm soil temperatures. Other than that, their difficulty level is actually quite low. So let's not waste any time and dive into the wonderful world of growing sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes, or Ipomoea batatas, are year-round vines that are native to Central South America. Both the home gardener and the commercial grower, however, treat the crop as a typical annual root vegetable. The leaves are edible raw or cooked, but what we're after is below the soil. Deliciously sweet, these modified tubers are hyper-nutritious and very prolific, which means only a few plants are needed to grow some epic sweet potato bounty. As undemanding as sweet potatoes are, they do require one thing: heat. Like we mentioned, these guys need 4 months of uninterrupted soil temperatures above 15 degrees Celsius or 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And really, that's the absolute minimum. Remember, these guys are tropical. Take the number of really warm days you have in the summer and multiply that by 120. And speaking of soil, for the absolute best tubers, we're going to want a certain kind of soil. Loose, well-drained, fairly rich, but balanced in nutrients. That's what we're aiming for. Too compact or clay-filled, and the tubers won't form properly. Too sandy, and you might get long, stringy crops instead. A little bit of sand, however, can be a good thing, especially in poorly drained soils. In North America, to keep the soil temperatures as high as possible, raised beds work the best. Just ensure they're at least a foot high. You can grow them in large pots and containers, such as this fabric grow bag here, but really 10 gallons is the minimum size you want to go. So keep that in mind. This is a big root crop, much bigger than, say, beets, carrots, or even these regular potatoes here. For nutrients, it's hard to beat simple compost. You're going to want to avoid animal manures as well as excessive nitrogen. Overfeeding lends itself to producing mass amounts of foliage with relatively little tubers. A compost-heavy blend for initial planting is best, but you can also dilute liquid feed, once a month for equally great results. Sweet potatoes do tolerate quite dry conditions once they're established, but try to keep the soil moist. Kind of similar to how we grow our carrots. Never soaking wet or standing in water, but also never bone dry either. Get out of here. For location, these guys need sun, and lots of it. Minimum of 6 to 8 hours a day of full sun, more if you can give it. In a nutshell, that's pretty much the basics of sweet potato growing and care. But where do we begin? How do we start our sweet potato growing adventure? Well, sweet potatoes are almost always grown from adventitious shoots called slips. These vigorous growing appendages sprout right out of the top 1/3 of a mature sweet potato tuber. You can buy sweet potato starter slips in the spring, but if you're like me, it's much more fun to make your own. So with that, let's go through the entire process of growing a sweet potato right to harvest as we condense the last 4 months down to just a couple of minutes. Like we mentioned earlier, sweet potatoes are grown from slips, little adventitious shoots that grow on the sweet potatoes themselves. Starter slips are available at certain times of the year, but honestly, making your own from regular grocery store sweet potatoes is easy and more reliable. There's 2 basic ways to start and grow these slips. Let me show you how. The first way is to cut the top 1/4 to 1/3 of the sweet potato off and place it fat end down in a glass of water. Very shortly, it'll begin to send out sprouts, which can be picked off and rooted. That's the method you most often see on the internet, But the second way is even easier. With this method, we simply place a whole sweet potato in a warm, dark cupboard, and within a few weeks, the whole end of the tuber sprouts all on its own. Check that out, a gaggle of slips. Pinch them off, place them in some water, and watch the roots just explode. Once I confirm a viable slip has rooted, I go ahead and plant them into small pots. It doesn't take long, and before you know it, you've got dozens of sweet potato starter plants. Now, begin this whole process at least 6 to 8 weeks before you want to plant your sweet potatoes out in the garden. Planting the well-started slips is easy. Like any other starter plant in your garden, plant the fledgling sweet potatoes right up to the first set of leaves. Space them a foot or more apart, mulch well, and give a good soaking to complete the planting. Even though sweet potatoes are a vine, don't worry about supporting the branches. You can trellis them for aesthetics, sure, no problem there, but letting them crawl horizontally of their own volition won't affect the productivity. All right, this takes us right up to the harvest. You can harvest these guys at any time, at any size, but they reach their full potential in both flavor and nutrition when the foliage begins to fail. Sweet potatoes grow really close to the surface, so be careful when digging them up not to damage their skins, as that's going to affect the storage. Usually, it's a minimum of 3 to 4 months to grow proper tubers, even in really warm climates. If you're worried that your sweet potatoes aren't quite ready yet, just feel around the outer edges of the row or container and pull out a test tuber. Try to harvest on a dry day to encourage the tubers to immediately begin curing. I like to cut away all the vines first so I can see what I'm doing. You can start in the middle or on the outside, it doesn't matter. Just begin to loosen the dirt as much as possible. Clean the sweet potatoes by hand, just by brushing off the dirt, and not by washing them. Set them aside as you're done, and keep working your way through your crop. To fully cure the tubers, lay them down flat and store them in a warm, humid place for about 2 weeks. If handled carefully, not bruised or marked, and cured for those 2 weeks, sweet potatoes will store at room temperature with medium humidity for up to 6 months. Now that's amazing. Sweet potatoes are an amazing plant, a rewarding crop with relatively low maintenance requirements. If you can provide the extended heat that's necessary to grow the tubers, and you got the space, sweet potatoes could be your next big crop. Hey, thanks so much for watching, guys. I appreciate the support more than you know. And if you're getting value from these videos, please like and share them to spread the word and help your fellow gardener to grow better.